Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey, and it's a solo episode today, even though I did say last week that I would try to get my brother or my husband on today's episode. It's just me, but don't worry, I'm still going to give a recap of our trip to Jackson, dive a little bit into that, and then the bulk of today's episode, I'm going to be talking about health coaching. So what that is, what that looks like, if you're ever interested in getting certified, what I'd recommend, the mistakes I've made, and all of the above. So I think this episode is going to be really helpful, even if you're not interested in health coaching. If you ever are looking to improve your health, working with a coach that is actually certified is going to be very, very valuable. And I hope you can at least take that away from today's episode, along with just learning more about my whole process and of what this looked like and what kind of led me to get certified in health coaching. So there's so many different methods or different ways you can go about it. So this is really just going to be based on my own personal story, but hopefully it's helpful to you to just know more about what it is I do and then what you can look for in somebody else if you're interested in getting coaching. So before we jump into that, let's go ahead and catch up. So like I had mentioned, we went to Jackson, Wyoming, Grand Teton National Park. We left on Wednesday. I led exercise class in the morning, and then we left for that. It's like an 11-hour, almost 12-hour drive with all the stops and getting food. And so we got there around like 9:30. We camped the first night, which my husband and I have never camped. Neither has my brother. Maybe like once in our backyard or something when we were little, but we are not avid campers. But anyway, it was affordable, so we set up camp. And luckily, my friend Emily and her husband were set up in the same campgrounds. And so they have a little camper that they can pull around. They are much more equipped to be camping. We really just had a tent. And that first night, it got so cold. We had no sleeping bags. We had some blankets and some towels. And I think it got down to like 35 degrees. It was freezing and I was miserable. And going to the bathroom wasn't that far of a hike, but at 1 a.m, I did not want to go out by myself because I know there can be bears, moose, wolves, everything. And so it was not a great experience that first night. But then the second night, well, I guess I should start with the next day. So then the next day we hiked about 14 miles. We did a hike in the morning, and then we did a hike in the afternoon around Phelps Lake, which if you've ever seen people talk about Phelps Lake, typically you're going to see a big rock that they're jumping off of into the water. And I really thought that I would do that, but the water was frigid, and we didn't go during a time of the year where it's warm, but my brother actually jumped off the rock, and I have a video of that. So he was brave enough to do it, but the water felt like a cold plunge. I got into my waist, and that was enough for me. So that was our afternoon hike that day. And then in the morning, we hiked around Jenny Lake. And I would say that's probably the most like popular area in Grand Teton National Park because there's a ferry that will take you to the different outlooks and then down a trail that kind of takes you up a mountain. So we did that. We did about, I'm trying to think. I think it was like 7 miles total down and back. But on that hike, we actually were like 30 yards from a bear. So we started walking on this trail, and I should back up too before that. We saw a moose giving birth. It was gnarly. We had gone up the hike, and then there was just a bunch of people hanging out in this one spot. They had those like binoculars, and they were looking at it. And right across the river, there was a moose giving birth. And so we stood and watched that for a little bit. And then as we started walking down the path, there were people turning around. They're like, hey, just so you know, there's a bear about a quarter mile on the path. And so we're like, okay, that's good to know. We kept going. And then all of a sudden you just hear the people in front of us go, oh, yep, there he is. And they just started to turn around. And so, we were about 30 yards from the bear. We have video evidence, and I was so terrified, especially last summer when Nate and I went on this trip, that we would have so many bear encounters because they really freak you out when you go into the park. Even like the stamp that we got when we went on the ferry around Jenny Lake, it was like, be bear aware. And it was like, just like, there's so much promotion and so much signage that's like, hey, watch out for bears, which is good. It prepares you to see one. But I was terrified last year that I would see a bear. And then when I actually saw one, I was like, you know what? Like, yes, they're scary and you don't want to, get too close or have a negative interaction with a bear, but it really wasn't that scary, which was a lot different. I thought I would panic, which that's so funny because when I turned around, once we saw the bear, I turned around and I'm like, where's Nate? And he was like up on the mountain way, way far away. Like he bolted out of there. And I was like, oh, like I could stand here and watch it for a little bit. I just wasn't that scared of it. But I know bears, you don't want to mess with them. And we definitely didn't get too close. We definitely backed away once we saw it. But it just went across the path. And then later, I believe we saw it on our way back. It was up higher across the river and just like foraging. So I don't think it was a grizzly bear. We think it was like a very blonde black bear, which their colors can range, I learned, from like a blonde to a deep black. So that's what I'm thinking it was, but that whole experience was just a lot less scary than I thought it was. But that was a long day. So we did 14 miles, I would say roughly 14 miles of hiking that day. And then we had to stay at the Heart 6 Ranch. If you're going to Grand Teton National Park, even if you can get a good deal on booking.com, I probably wouldn't recommend this stay. It was beautiful, like the location was beautiful, and when we got there in the evening, they were running the horses, and so down kind of in a valley, there were a bunch of horses running around, super pretty. And then we woke up in the morning and the horses were running past kind of like the log cabin-ish room that we were staying in. Beautiful, but they have a restaurant there, and that night we were so famished. After hiking that long, we just needed food. We didn't really care how good it was, and that was a very below average burger and fries. The whole experience was just very interesting. But then we got back to our room, and luckily we had a shower, right? Because we camped that night before. Then we had a shower, thank goodness. But the bed sheets had hair in them, and I'm very squeamish about stuff like that. If my environment doesn't feel clean or like sanitized, I start to feel like very claustrophobic. Like I don't want to touch anything. I want to like lay on a bed but not move at all. I just am like really freaked out about germs, and I'm not scared of germs. I'm not scared of getting sick. I just think like other people that I don't know's stuff in their hair, places like that, just really freaks me out. So that was a stay. At least we had a bed. At least it was warm. At least we had a shower. But I wouldn't recommend it. Pretty below average experience. My brother, he like got on the bed and it like bottomed out. Like the springs were so shot. And I was really kind of upset because this stay, not that it was expensive, but it wasn't cheap. And I didn't really look too much into the reviews because I'm like, it was rated like 4.5 stars on the one website that I looked at to book it through. And I went on their website. It looked really great. They had a restaurant. They had different things that they offered. It was cool. And so then when we got there, my brother was looking at the reviews on a different website, and he was just reading them. And one of them was like, if you want to get sick like the Pilgrims did, like this would be your place to stay. Basically, like it's meant to look antique-y, and it's a very non-updated facility. And anywho, that was just an experience. So at least we had a warm bed, like I said, and we got a shower. And then the next day we hiked to Delta Lake. And if you've ever hiked to Delta Lake, you know it is a terrifying trail. We got to a certain point and it was like, oh, this is, if it's this way all the way up, like it wasn't easy by any means, but we were like, okay, we could do this. And then we get to this point where we can't find the trail anymore. Like the trail, there was some snow, and so we really could not find the trail. So we just kept going up. We were scaling rocks, like rock climbing all the way up. Then there was this point where my brother had on tennis shoes. The rest of us had on like hiking style shoes. And if you would have slipped on this like snow-packed ledge, you would have like slid to the bottom. Like you would have not been able to stop. And he was freaking out. Like I saw the terror in his eyes, and I was like, oh, he is going to kill me. So we got him across there. I waited for him. He ended up going like all the way up over the trail. Like digging his fingers into the snow-packed side of the mountain, and his feet like crawling over it. And he was like, we're doing all of this to see a stupid lake. I'm like, hey, it's an adventure. So anyway, we started going. It was so hard. It was obviously the hardest hike I've ever done. I'm somebody who is like, when I get on all trails, I'm like, okay, let's find a hard hike. Let's find something that's going to challenge. And usually they're like low to moderate or moderate difficulty. And this was labeled hard. And I think we underestimated how hard it was actually going to be. So if the trail would have been properly marked, it would have been a different story. But we were really scaling rocks, going over like the water that was like the waterfalls rushing down the side of the mountain. And then we finally get to the lake. And if you look on a map of Delta Lake, which you should, because it's like a aqua blue lake, beautiful during certain seasons of the year. We got up there and it was like a gray, like a foggy blue gray. And we were pretty disappointed because when you look on the map, it is aqua blue. And then when you saw it in real life, it was like, oh, well, that's kind of anticlimactic. So we hung out there for a little bit. We were like, at least we did it. We can say we did it. I think it was 9 miles round trip, 7 miles. It said 7 miles, but it felt way, way longer than that. So we started our trek down. The trek down was much easier. But it's crazy, the people that hike obviously all the time, because they were just like busting down this mountain like so fast with how they were moving around different things, and we were just like very slow and steady, which I don't think is a bad thing. We're pretty like amateur hikers. We do it like once a summer and then that's about it. But anyway, we made it through that whole hike, that whole experience, and then we went back to the campground and we stayed for our last night camping. This night was a lot better. My brother actually slept in the car because I don't think wanted any part of sleeping in a tent again. So Nate and I slept in the tent. It started raining. He said at some point he could hear coyotes or wolves or something howling, and I didn't notice that. But at least this night was a lot warmer. Before that, we went and we went to Local in Jackson. We did some kind of like shopping for souvenirs. I got a sweatshirt and a shirt, and then just walked around and then got supper at Local. And then we went to Moo's. I think it's like ice cream and creamery or something. And then we went to a candy shop, and then we headed back to the campgrounds and then just hung out with Emily and Luke a little bit more. So that was really kind of a summary of our trip. It was a very quick, pretty short 2 full days of hiking. We went, well over 20 miles in 2 days, and it was a lot. Like, my body's definitely felt it, especially on Saturday and Sunday, because Saturday we just drove home. So we were in a car then for another 12 hours. And when you've been so active and then you sit, it's like, oh my gosh, like my legs were so tired and sore. But we got through it. Emily and Luke then, because they live in Illinois, they stopped at our house that night and stayed. And Emily, she's been a guest actually on the podcast to talk about homesteading and sourdough, gardening, all the things. We worked together at St. Elizabeth Hospital a couple years ago actually now. And this is the first time I'd seen her in 2 years, which is kind of crazy because it didn't really feel like it had been that long. But Emily was just somebody I had met when I worked there, and instantly I knew like we were just very compatible friends, and it was just really nice to be able to spend time with her and her husband, and hopefully we can kind of make it a thing to see them more than once every 2 years. But it's just great to have friends where you kind of pick up right where you left off. Like, it didn't really feel, like I said, like we hadn't seen each other for that long. So that was good. It was also good to spend time with my brother. This was part of his graduation gift last year, was to take him on a hiking trip. I don't know if he'll ever hike again, in all honesty, especially after that last hike around to Delta Lake and down. But it was really just good to spend time with him and have a little bit of time away. It's hard for me to separate from work and do none of that, especially when you're on a trip where you're active. I feel like it all just kind of, it wasn't like a restful trip, I guess is what I would say. It wasn't restful, but it was at least nice to get away from my environment and just, spend time with family and friends. That's really the bulk of that catch up, kind of our recap of our trip. I wish my brother was here to just tell you how horrible I am of making him go on that hike. But, hey, we made it. We're still alive. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else has been going on. I got home and my garden was a complete disaster. So that was a little bit disappointing, but I then spent all of Sunday weeding my garden, especially my flowers, and it's all looking significantly better. But a lot of my vegetable garden vegetables, they're still green, they're still alive, but farmers in this area spray dicamba or different chemicals on their fields, which again, like I can't argue that they shouldn't do that because they're raising so much more than I am with my garden. But it is frustrating because a lot of things in my garden are like stunted growth, or you can tell by like Emily's husband was looking at it, like the shape or the curl of the leaves kind of determines what chemical kind of like impacted the growth of that plant. So we will see if my garden can pull through it. Really fingers crossed that I can get a greenhouse here soon so I don't have to worry about that. That would be best case scenario. But everything else is pretty much alive, looking well when it comes to my flowers. So that was good. It's just really overwhelming, I think, when you get home and you see all of the things that you need to do or that need to be done. And I allowed myself to have a little bit of a mental breakdown on Sunday morning after I had seen my garden. And I just feel like I'm really in a state right now where and everybody's going to say, yeah, they're working hard, but I feel like I'm working really, really hard at a lot of different things and I'm not really seeing what I want to. And I think God is really teaching me to give up control because I know I've talked about this, but I really, really struggle giving up control and not obsessing over things that I think I can control, but I in reality can't, right? Like I can't control the weather. I can't control people. I can't control how people treat me. Like I'm just in a season of having to give up control, and it's very scary and it's very difficult for me. And I just cried because I'm like, I am working and I'm trying so hard and I'm so frustrated with a variety of different things going on. And then I spent some time outside, which I'm like, this is an underrated way to heal, which I know it sounds so basic, but getting outside, like it is so crucial. And it made such a huge difference for me to get outside, work in my garden, not feel so overwhelmed and stressed, and finally take a deep breath. And then I came inside. We had my dad over for supper. Well, my family over for supper. I did sourdough rolls and hamburgers. I did a caprese salad. I did homemade brownies with ice cream. It was really great. And then I got to talk to my family. Every time my family sits around the dinner table, I scheme up some new idea, and my dad just like really fuels the fire because I was talking about the greenhouse, and he's like, you know what, maybe this summer, because it's been raining, like we can build a greenhouse. And going on, I'm like, oh my gosh, like okay, like my mom's like, we can't come over for supper. She just looked at Nate. She's like, we can't come over for supper anymore because they just like brainstorm these ideas. And anyway, it was just really funny. But then that evening we went and played pickleball. And we played pickleball for about an hour, 15 minutes-ish. It was so much fun. I hadn't ever played it before, and I've only ever played tennis, and I'm pretty trash at tennis, in all honesty. I really just hit the ball way too hard, and it ends up going over the fence. It's kind of a disaster. So it was really fun to be able to play pickleball with my dad and my mom, and then Nate and I, and we could pretty competitively play against each other. Yeah, it's just cool because people of all ages, all abilities can actually play a sport together, and it's a lot less intimidating to me than tennis is, a little bit slower pace. So it was so fun. I'm like, we need to start just have a day where we go and play pickleball all evening. I'm like, on Sundays, like we need to get two other couples, then we can have like 4-on-4, well, 2-on-2, and then another group going 2-on-2, and then we can like tournament style it. I think it would be really fun to just like make that a thing for us this summer. Also, it's way like harder than I thought it was. We were dripping in sweat, which granted is super humid, but yeah, it was just a really nice weekend after I let myself just be a little bit emotional in the morning and kind of power through that, feel my emotions and actually cry, which I feel like all of us just need to do that at some point. then I was set up for a much better day and a much better week. So I know that was a lot. That was a very long catch up. They usually are. I was looking back at last week's episode when I had said, oh yeah, this will be a short one. And it was like 57 minutes. I just can't stop rambling, apparently. But how I'm nourishing my mind, body, and spirit. How I'm nourishing my body is I've actually started a new program. I have really been wanting to have a program for myself when it comes to exercise. I lead exercise classes, which is awesome. I love doing that, but I want somebody outside of myself to train myself. And so I found this program, and let me look at who the trainer is because I honestly forgot. I'm on day 2, well, day 3 technically, but yesterday I led exercise class, so that's technically my active rest day. JM Fitness, and she is on Playbook is the app, and I'm doing the Shred at the Gym challenge of hers. It's 12 weeks of lifting. I love it. It's truly makes me so excited to get into the gym. And I think we all go through those phases where it's like we want to exercise and then maybe we're still exercising, but we're just not very excited to be there. And so having something like this to kind of spice up my routine has been really great. I would say pickleball is another one, and finding a new way to move my body outside of just walking in the evenings, but going and playing pickleball is kind of a goal of mine this summer. How I'm nourishing my mind. Oh boy, I would say probably getting outside and like this morning, for example, I just sat outside, I did my devotional, and then I journaled, which I haven't done in a long time. But I think in my mind, and I was talking to a client about this last week, we like to really explode what we need to do in our minds to make it seem like a really, really big deal and very overwhelming. And then when we actually like think about what we need to do and we jot it down, we write it down and look at it, it feels much more small. So like we really like to, overwhelm ourselves with what we need to do, and then we actually look at what we need to do and it's like, oh, I've got this is very doable. And so I did that this morning, just with more structure of like, okay, this is the program I want to run, these are the 2 things I want to add into this program this year, this is when I'm running my Inflamed to Inspired program, which I'm not running that. If you're interested, you will still have a chance to join that program after today's episode. Inflamed to Inspired, you can message me, you can email me. I've sent out emails this week about it. But with that course, I'm not running it again until January of 2025. So this is really your last opportunity to join for the rest of the year, because I'm changing the structure of what my coaching cycles look like, just based off of some different factors. And so that's kind of the scoop on that. Also with my podcast, I really want to do more with it. I want to find a way to connect a little bit deeper with people, and also maybe get sponsorships for the episodes or have really unique and interesting guests on, which I'm so blessed with the guests I've had on so far. So just like jotting down what it is that I actually want things to look like, because I would say for the last week and a half, I've just been blowing things out of proportion. When I really look at what I need to do, it's not as overwhelming. Okay, and then how I'm nourishing my spirit. I actually started reading the book of Acts, and I've been starting in the New Testament and worked my way to Acts, but I really think it's so interesting how it talks about Paul's journey, and it talks about after the ascension of Christ, what the life looked like for the disciples, and how they like nominated somebody to join the disciples once Christ had left. It was all of these like stories in the Bible that I feel like I've never intentionally like sat down and read or understood. Or like when they talk about the ascension of Christ, it was like he was with the disciples, he ascended and a cloud covered him so they could no longer see him. And I guess in my mind, like that was kind of the visual I had of the ascension, because our church actually has like a stained glass window of the ascension of Christ. Ascension, whatever. Again, you know this by now, I don't pronounce things right all the time. But anyway, that's what I visualized. But just to like be able to picture it and to picture how the disciples reacted, it's been so interesting. And I think just like sitting down and reading a chapter has been something I've been the most consistent with throughout the last year when it comes to the spiritual side of things, because I just really I really like working through books of the Bible because it gives you the big picture rather than like reading random Bible stories or doing different devotionals. It pulls verses from all over. I like to have like the sequence of the Bible and what things, how things kind of progressed. And so that has really been fun. It's just really interesting, and I've been loving that. So with that, I think let's go ahead and jump into the bulk of today's episode. Really quick, if you haven't left a rating or review on either Apple Podcast or Spotify, I'd love it if you did that. If you leave a review, you can go ahead and screenshot that and send it to me over on Apple Podcasts. If you leave a review, send it to me any way you can contact me, and I'll get you entered into the $100 gift card giveaway that I'm doing on July 21st is when I'm drawing for that, which is my birthday. But you'll get a $100 gift card to the grocery store of your choice. So, okay. Lots of talking, lots of chatting, but let's jump into what is health coaching, how I got certified, because I think for people who maybe haven't heard about health coaching, or they've worked with health coaches in the past, but they didn't really have certifications, or sometimes people are like self-proclaimed health coaches, I wanted to just give you kind of the layout of what I think a health coach is, different ways you can get certified, and what a health coach isn't. So when I got certified for holistic health coaching, I went through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, or IIN, if you see people refer to that. I would say that's probably the number one hub of producing health coaches. They've been doing it since, I want to say like 2005, maybe it was 1999. I really shouldn't give dates because I'm not 100% sure. I'm just like thinking of the quality of some of their videos. They looked like they were from way back in the past. So, but IIN, I really can't complain too much about the program. I did their 6-month accelerated program. Otherwise, you can do a year-long program. And what this does is it leads you through different traditional Chinese medicine practices, nutrition practices, movement, meditation, stress management. It really covers a lot. And I think when you get out of that certification, you're almost left like, wow, I just covered so much. I don't even know what direction I want to take my business. IIN is very reputable for producing health coaches that later become very famous or very popular. One would be Melissa Wood Health, Gabby Bernstein, and then also Sahara Rose. Those might be some names you've heard of. That's not really why I decided to join the course. I had seen another gal in the Omaha area go through IIN, and I loved the transformation that I saw in her life. At this point in time, I was also navigating, could support my body through chronic pain while healing my body, and I just really wanted to take an approach that was nothing like Western medicine. Not that I'm anti-Western medicine, but I just really I didn't want to be in a hospital setting. I really considered doing nursing, which I think nursing is wonderful if you're in that field. Like, that's an amazing profession, but for me it just didn't really align. And also, I just think I would have been a terrible nurse because I get kind of squeamish with things. So it was a blessing that I didn't do that for other people. Definitely a good choice on my part. But anyway, I started looking at my body as a whole system. And I think that's what's so cool about holistic health coaching. Sure, they talk a lot about bio-individuality, meaning that everybody needs to be treated differently because their bodies are different, right? Not one person is the same from the other. So we have to look at a variety of different factors when they come to us with a particular symptom. So say you came to me with chronic low back pain, I wouldn't just look at the chronic low back pain and be like, okay, this is what we need to do for that area. We need to get you a steroid injection, get you on some different pain medications. Well, that would be very more like Western medicine focused, speaking from my own history in that regard. But instead I would look at the person and I would think, okay, what levels of stress are you experiencing, right? What does your diet look like? How do you enjoy exercising, or how are you currently moving your body? Maybe you're doing exercises that are actually like harming that area of your body, not supporting it. We look at your plate. Are you eating enough protein to build muscle, to build strength? So when we do those core exercises to protect that low back, they're actually like building and they're gaining strength. They're not just having sugary foods that are then causing inflammation in your body, or inflammatory foods and oils that are causing inflammation in your body. So it's like we look at this whole person. I'm not just looking at the one thing that they're experiencing or the one area of pain they're experiencing or inflammation. Very similar would be if somebody came to me with bloating or constipation. Well, we're not just going to look at your diet. We're going to look at the mental piece, because stress can alter that bacteria in your gut, causing you to have upset stomachs. Anxiety and depression are huge factors why people notice bloating or constipation or diarrhea, right? So stress needs to be evaluated, how you're managing stress, how you're handling it. And then we can dive into what your plate should look like, different supplements you could add in. But it's not just looking at the issue. And I think I've expressed that a lot. I know those are, I think examples are nice because I feel like a lot of you can probably relate to one or both of those. I know for me, those are both of the biggest symptoms I was having, was that low back pain, and then also just upset stomach, bloating all the time. And so that's why I went through IIN. Before I went through IIN, I actually got certified as a personal trainer. So that helped me a lot with the physiology side of things. And then before that, I got my bachelor's of science degree in health and fitness studies and a minor in psychology. So my life has always kind of followed the path of health and wellness. When I was in college, it was a lot of doing anatomy, physiology, preparing you to go to grad school or get a master's. I didn't do that, obviously, and then I segued into that personal training, worksite wellness space, and then I got certified in holistic health coaching. And I wanted to also talk about the certification that I got and to just kind of keep you aware of who you're working with and if they are actually like a certified health coach, because when it comes to, especially with nutrition, things get really, really funky. So you'll notice on my Instagram or on most of the things that I say, I'm a holistic health and nutrition coach. I have to say coach because I can't say I'm a holistic health nutritionist, because unless you have gotten typically, in most cases, unless you've gotten a bachelor's degree and then a master's in nutrition, you cannot claim to be a nutritionist. So if somebody, they didn't even go to college, but they're a nutritionist, that's a red flag in my mind, because they're not actually a nutritionist. Okay. There are certain exams you need to take to call yourself a nutritionist. Same with being like a dietitian, right? You can't make these false claims of being something in that realm of nutrition without actually having that certification. A lot of people maybe will claim to have, to be able to be a holistic nutritionist. I've seen a few people on social media that I know aren't, that call themselves holistic nutritionists. And it's just like a foggy space to be in. But I'm telling you this because I want to protect you from, not saying that those would be harmful situations, but when you think you're paying for a service and you're not getting what you are necessarily maybe paying for, it can be really frustrating. And so finding people that you trust to work with, people that are very open about their experiences, about their education, that is very, very crucial. That's why I share my story, because not only do I have personal experience with living in chronic pain, and also having disordered eating and struggling with that space as well, I also have the certifications to back up what I'm doing. And I think, it's hard because really, if you're doing, if you're constantly learning and you're reading books and you're researching, I don't feel like everybody needs to have the title of being something just to work with other people, because you're still very capable. But I think that's when it gets foggy on like what you're actually qualified to talk about versus just being like a friend to somebody. Like if I was just not certified in anything and a friend came to me with an issue, I would have no problem sharing what I know and what I've learned. But if I was going to have somebody paying for my service, I want to make sure that I have every certification. I have my own booty covered so that if something happens, it is not because I'm not qualified to do it, right? Which that has never happened. I always think with what I'm doing, I'm never doing anything to intentionally harm someone. I'm not giving out supplements. I'm not giving out medications. I'm not doing anything that would harm your body. So I've never had those situations, but I know that, obviously it's possible. that something could not maybe go as planned. And I just want to make sure that I'm covered with what I'm certified in to talk about. So that's why I went through IIN. There's also this diet program, which I'm not going to say the name because some of you might be on it. Some of you might have done it in the past or be a health coach under that diet program. But if you've heard me talk about diets I don't support, it's probably pretty easy to guess, but they are self-proclaimed health coaches. So they're women that have gone through this diet program that have really enjoyed the process that then start coaching other people. So I know there's no certification that takes place there, which again, that's where it gets very dicey because it's like, do you need a certification? Do you not? I'm just speaking from if I was to work with somebody else, I would want to work with a certified health coach, somebody who has spent 6 months and over $4,000 worth on education versus somebody who just participated in a diet and then became a coach. Right? So that's the difference that I see. And I think that's where health coaching gets a really bad rap, is when diet programs are creating health coaches based off of their curriculum when they really shouldn't be doing that, but nobody's saying anything because it's such like it's like an untouched territory. I don't even know if that's the right way to say that. Like there's just like no regulations, right? Even if you look at pricing for holistic health coaching or even naturopathic medicine to get certified in that, to get your doctorate of naturopathic medicine, it's like $7,000, which if you look at like even just becoming a PA it's dollars to become a PA and be in the medical system. So holistic health is like, it's unregulated really. But that's where, like I said, you want to work with somebody or you want to at least learn from somebody that has a certification to back up what they're talking about. And that's my personal opinion, just because it can get so confusing on like what's technically like ethical and what's not ethical in this realm. And I think that's what maybe limits a lot of people from taking the next step with coaching, because they're like not sure who they can trust. And I hope that through listening to the podcast, you've learned like you can trust what I'm telling you, what I'm sharing, but I'm also talking about personal experiences. And so there might be coaches that are holistic health coaches, but don't have the same philosophy that I do. And that's fine. We can still both do our own thing and be certified, but have different viewpoints. And I think you're going to find that with everybody, as everybody does things just a little bit differently and in their approach. And yeah, I just think it's valuable to find somebody that you trust when you're looking for coaching. So how you could go about getting certified in holistic health coaching, if you're interested, I would go ahead and I think having the anatomy and physiology side of things that I got with my bachelor's degree was very, very valuable. I learned a lot through that, just about the human body. And then from that, I was able to get a job in a hospital working with people with different heart conditions. And I was honestly able to see what not to do diet-wise that they were really promoting for heart conditions, based off of what I view as inflammatory versus anti-inflammatory. So that experience really helped me separate what I truly believe about inflammation and how I want to work with clients to decrease inflammation. So having that degree is awesome, but you don't need it. So you could actually just now apply to become a holistic health coach through IIN, get certified in either 6 months or a year, and then you would be good to go. If that's a route you're ever interested in taking, you can message me. I think I have, what is the discount? Like $400 or something off a program. It's a pretty significant amount that you can get off of your program if you go through a coach. I'm not saying that to pressure you into doing it or anything. I always really try to separate myself from things I promote. Like I'm not doing that for my own personal gain. Trust me. I just am cheap, and I would rather not spend an extra $500+ if I could go back and do this again. So I just tell you that so you know, not because I need a kickback from you. But if you also have questions outside of this, you can of course message me. But once you would do that 6 month to a year program, you're good to start your business. From there, what I did is I became an LLC, so a limited liability company. And that just means that I have a corporation, like this Divine Purpose is my business, and I do all of my coaching under Divine Purpose. So I did a name that wasn't my name because I wanted to separate myself from my business. So it's not Bailey Seaton Health Coaching, it's Divine Purpose. I just liked that separation. I think for some people it maybe makes it a little confusing, like what's divine purpose? Like that doesn't sound nutrition like or holistic health like, but that is the name I decided based off of just really struggling navigating what I wanted my or what I thought my purpose was. For so long I connected it to a job. And so really Divine Purpose was the name I picked so that you know that through the gifts that God has given you, you have a purpose here on earth. And my soul, not my sole desire, but one of my desires for you is that you're able to feel physically, mentally, emotionally well enough to live out that purpose and to care for other people and not feel burnt out and exhausted and frustrated with where you're at in your health journey. I want you to feel good enough to very, very clearly see what your purpose is here without the cloudiness that comes when you're living in chronic pain. Because I know sometimes just like getting through the day-to-day functions that's enough, right? So it's hard to live out your purpose if you are just focused on your chronic pain or the situation you find yourself in health-wise. So that's kind of where the name came about. But again, that's when I created that business and I started taking clients in 2021, October of 2021. My business did not become an official LLC until a full year after that. So then it was like November of 2022. Gosh, my dates are so... the time is flying. It's kind of crazy when I think back to how long I've been doing this, but my primary program is Nourish to Flourish. And I would say I struggled a lot with navigating what I wanted. Honestly, for the first year of starting, after I got certified that next year, I'm like, what in the heck do I want to talk about? Like I said, IIN prepares you almost too well to do a variety of different things. So for me, I really wanted to focus on the exercise side of things. And then I just felt like that was very superficial. Not that moving your body isn't valuable, but I just didn't want to write workout programs for people and then have to be so physically obsessed with people's bodies, of like when you're looking at a trainer and it's like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to work with them because they are super defined and ripped. And then, it's like your body becomes your resume, and that just, it wasn't what I wanted. And it didn't feel very holistic, right? Like to just focus on your body. There was so much more that I wanted to do with that. And so I focused a lot on healthy habits, and I ran my first program in October. It was like 7 days. And with that, it was so simple. I think I had 12 people that joined. It was $12.99, and it was a program I ran. That's just the process of a business, right? From there, then I did Movement Matters, which I don't want to share anything about that yet. But, Movement Matters was the next round that I did. And that was much more about like physical exercise. So I started with healthy habits, and then I'm like, well, maybe I should add in exercise. So then I did, a challenge in December, 24-day winter challenge. And then that next spring I led Movement Matters, and I think I had 5 people do that. It was like a hybrid program. I met one-on-one with people, but also in a group setting, and it was fine. I just feel like I didn't know what I was doing at that time. I did, in the sense of I knew what I should be talking about, but like coaching still felt very awkward. It felt kind of weird. So then that's when I started working with a coach, and I developed Nourish to Flourish, which is the program that you see me talk a lot about, one-on-one coaching. And it is targeted around inflammation because I really stripped back everything. And I thought, okay, what was my number one reason to start looking into holistic health? Oh, I was living with chronic pain and I felt awful, and I had no idea why. I didn't even know what inflammation was. Truly didn't even know I didn't even know inflammation existed, in full transparency. No idea. Until I was like, oh, okay. So I started looking back at all my symptoms, and I'm like, that was caused by inflammation. My gut issues was caused by inflammation. My acne was caused by inflammation. And like everything, I just linked it back. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was a ball of inflammation, and I had no idea. Nobody ever even talked to me about that when I was at the doctor's office. Like when the doctor who I met with initially, I was 19, was like, I think we should schedule back surgery after I learned about my fractures in my L4 and L5 vertebrae and a bulging disc, he never even mentioned, oh, well, maybe you're just really inflamed, causing the chronic pain. Not saying you can reverse an injury, but causing the pain. And so it was just like this light bulb moment where I'm like, that is what I want to do with my IIN health coaching certification, is I want to take this on to talk about inflammation with clients. And I want to work with people who are in like the depths of feeling horrible, because I've been there, and I feel like I just have a lot of perspectives that coaches that maybe haven't been through that don't have, right? But then the pendulum swung one way. So I was very inflamed, very uncomfortable. And then over the next year and a half, it swung to over exercising, under eating, tracking calories. And I got so off track, and my relationship with food was awful. I was scared to fuel my body. I was scared to miss a day of exercise. So then I had to then kind of again, take that next phase of okay, Bailey, we need to go back to holistic health. We need to look at your body as a whole system. Okay, how can we begin healing? Now focusing much more on the mindset, because for so long I'm like, well, it's a body issue. It's a body problem, right? That's what we're going to focus on. And then I was hit with that, and I'm like, this is a mindset problem, if not more than a physical problem, right? So then I started healing that relationship with food, and I'm like, this is something that women need to know. They need to know that they don't need to fear carbs. We can find such better nourishment if we actually have carbs as a healthy part of a balanced plate, right? Or having, quote, healthy and unhealthy foods. What if we just viewed food as food, and we just really strive to nourish our body with the highest quality food? And so that was just a whole mindset shift for me, that then I embarked on that new journey. And then that's when I opened one-on-one coaching, and I've been running that ever since. Now I've started a group coaching program, Inflamed to Inspired, which like I mentioned before, I'm only running one more round, and then it'll be January of 2025 that next round will go. But that's where we really break down each area of inflammation. And The Inflammation Spectrum was a book by Dr. Will Cole that just opened my eyes up to where inflammation is stemming from, helping trace back the root cause. And I think you're going to notice this on most people's health journeys, is it's never linear. It's never I did this, this, and this, and boom, I feel great, I'm wonderful. No, I did this, felt better. And then I was a downhill slope, mindset wise, was in the tank. And then it was oh, wow, I feel like I'm in a really good place now. And that's a great place to be, but that doesn't mean that's where my journey will end. But there's so many resources that just keep popping up that I'm wow, okay, that's the next step I want to take. That's the next educational piece I want to add to my business. That's the next progression I want of this program. And I think that's what's so fun about what I'm doing, is it's so creative, and it's hard not to have that shiny object syndrome of that looks really great, I'm going to do that. So I feel very comfortable with where things are at now. But that doesn't go to say that once I got certified, there wasn't a lot of confusion until I got to where I was about not this last December, but the year before that, when I really opened this program up. And so it's just been it's been an incredible journey, and it's been unlike anything I've seen anybody else do. And that's not to say that, what I'm doing is so unique, which of course I'm going to think it is, because I've just not seen a lot of coaches take the approach that I am. But a lot of other coaches are doing amazing things in their own space. I have a coaching friend, and she does so much with the mindset and really identifying where her bodies are storing trauma or all these emotions. And that is a piece where I'm not that coach, right? I'm not the coach. We get deep, but we don't get super deep into the emotions and the trauma that you're experiencing. We talk a little bit more about stress, because the next phase of stress is going to be inflammation. But she does an incredible, incredible job of doing that mindset piece. And that's an area where she's doing incredible things. And that doesn't mean there's a ton of other coaches out there that aren't. But I really just have a lot of passion for holistic health coaching. And it's really cool because a lot of coaches in this space are just very collaborative. There's not a lot of competition out there. It's hard for me, being a naturally competitive person, and not so much with other people, but really with myself. It's hard not to have that come up, but it's everything is much better when you're working with other people. So if you go through IIN to get certified, I would highly recommend connecting with other IIN coaches. That's been the biggest blessing of getting that specific certification, because I've been able to connect with coaches that have been certified through the same program. You get different connection groups while you're getting certified, but then after that, you're really able to like get on Instagram and find people that are following IIN and then connect with them. Now I've joined a coaching mastermind with just a handful of coaches that have all graduated through IIN, and we're just going to meet to collaborate and talk about what's going on in our own businesses and support each other too, because all of us are doing this independently. The biggest takeaway I want you to have is that health coaching is not an MLM. I think sometimes when people approach me about coaching, they think I'm a part of like a multi-level marketing scheme, and that I have the same curriculum that 600 plus other coaches do in the space. And that's just not the case. Everything I've done in my business, I've developed 100% independently. I have dedicated so much time and so many resources into what I'm doing. Like I said, the certification wasn't cheap. Getting certified in personal training isn't cheap. Getting your bachelor's degree isn't cheap, right? Like, this isn't a scheme. This isn't something that I developed just on a whim. I did this because I'm very intentional with what I do, and I'm very intentional with my business. And I'm even trying to get more intentional with the type of person I want to be working with and honing in on that, because I love to help anyone and everyone, regardless of if I'm getting paid or if I'm not getting paid from them. That's just where I find a lot of my passion. And I was actually just having this conversation with my family this weekend of how I'm like, my business model stinks, because what I want to do is I want to equip women with all of the tools they need so that they can move forward independently, not depending on another person to continue to coach them for the rest of their lives, because I don't think that's fair. And I see coaches out there, they want to like kind of like gradually like pull you along of like, okay, let's do this. Well, I really see this area where you still need improvement. Okay, let's do this. And they like keep you roped in to paying them for years and years. And I just am so much more passionate about the education piece and knowing, like, giving you what I know, right? And that's hard to do because I probably know too much at this point, but I want to educate so you can be independent. And I'm like, that business model stinks though, because it's not like I get clients for years and years. I get clients for 6 months, and then it's like they're on their merry way. They're doing amazing. I get to check in with them after a year and they're still doing well. And it's like that feels good. It feels good to know that what they've done is a long-term and a long-lasting result of us working together. And so that's where so much of my purpose that I found through my occupation comes in, of just like living out that kind and compassionate and non-schemy business model, which doesn't mean that it's not always dandy though. I'm like, because it's hard, because I'm always working to get new clients, because after 6 months, like I said, they're on their merry way and they're doing well. And that's my goal of every interaction, is that when people meet me, they leave knowing how to take care of their bodies. They leave feeling confident and inspired to take care of their bodies. But I'm like, man, that business model is just not the best, but it is, because that's how I want to run a business. I don't want to be schemy. I don't want to take an approach that everybody else is. I want people to leave feeling confident in themselves and their ability to nourish their body, spirit, and mind on their own, because that's just the coolest thing to see. So really, that is health coaching in a nutshell. I think for a long time, I didn't really think about how health coaching is viewed. I kind of forgot that there's a lot of MLM business schemes that are creating health coaches without them like actually being health coaches. And so that term health coach gets a bad rap on what that looks like. So I think I just maybe wanted to explain myself, my business a little bit more, but also encourage you, if you're interested in it, I could not encourage you more to get certified and message me with questions you have about that certification process, because it can feel very overwhelming, but it's 100% worth it. And if I would have just had a podcast to listen to of somebody telling me exactly what they did, it would have been so much more helpful, rather than me having to do so much research on my own and figuring out, like, am I getting like ripped off by doing this program? Is this actually legit? Is it respected in the community? And luckily it all is. So IAN, again, is who I went through. Message me with questions, or if you want a discount off your program, I believe I have something that a code that I can give you. I'm not 100% sure. That's because I just don't promote it, because I don't want people to, get the wrong impression. But I have a code if you're interested in getting certified and you're cheap like me and just want some money off. So, all right, with that, let's go ahead and close today's episode in prayer. So, dear Lord, just thank you for today, and thank you for the sun that's shining. Thank you for the rain that you've sent our way. I just ask that you continue to be with whoever is listening to today's episode, and that they are able to very clearly see what the purpose is that you have for them, and that they're able to really just lean into you throughout all seasons of their lives and all different stages that they find themselves in. I just ask that this episode made them feel inspired to take on healing, or to, become a holistic health coach, and really just like have you at the center of their business and their business model. And that I just ask that they feel so encouraged moving forward, and that they're just ready to take on the rest of the week, rest of the month, and know that you're always there to support them, and that there's just so many people out there that love and care for them as well. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, so with that, if you're interested in following along with my life outside of the podcast, you can find me at Nourish with Bailey on Instagram, or Bailey Seaton on Facebook, or really anything else. I also will have all of that linked in the description of today's episode, so you can reach out to me with any questions, or if you're interested in either the one-on-one or group coaching program that I'm running. Again, Inflamed to Inspired will be closed until January of 2025. But yeah, with that, I'll talk to you again next Wednesday. Bye.